Hello, Dragons. Hope you and your family and your loved ones are doing well, that you're safe and relatively happy during this trying time. Today, we're going to talk about rate of change and slope. We're going to solidify this, we're going to polish and perfect. So the definition is the change in y over the change in x. We're looking for two different numbers that, when in a ratio form, will tell us how the line is slanted. One of the things that we can also look at is this notation over here. This is delta. It's a Greek letter. That means the change in y over the change in x. So this is a short way of doing all of this subtraction up here of the y coordinates. So one of the ways you can find slope is through an equation. So let's quickly review how we do that. If we have something in standard form, we have an x and a y variable, what we're going to do is we're going to move the x term to the opposite side of the y term. And we do that by doing the inverse operation. So if I have 2x, I'll subtract 2x. So remember, if you take a term such as 2x, which is located on the left side of the equation, and you move it to the right side, the sign will change as well. So a 2x on the left of the original equation now becomes a negative 2x on the right side. So the first step is to move the x term. Second step is we are going to divide by the coefficient of y, or the number in front of y. So we're going to divide everything. So you notice I have my fraction bars. I'm going to divide everything. The next thing we're going to do is reduce anything numerically that we can, and we notice that 12 divided by 3 is a 4. A negative 12 divided by a positive 3 is a negative 4. And we notice that the number in front of x is going to be my slope. So in this particular case, negative 2/3 is my slope or rate of change. Another quick example using the same guidelines. If we want to solve for y with respect to x, what will we do? The first thing we will do is move the x term to the other side. Next thing that we will do is we'll divide by the number in front of y, which in this case is a negative 8. We'll reduce anything numerical. Notice both of my red fractions here will reduce. I look at the number in front of the x, or the number being multiplied by the variable x, and that is 15 over 4, or if you prefer the decimal, that's going to be 3.75. All right, use these steps, piece of scratch paper, whatever you prefer at home, and work this problem. Another way you can find rate of change is from a table. So in this example, Emily is noticing that her hot air balloon is descending at a constant rate. Now you notice that constant rate is going to imply that we're going to have a linear representation. So I can already say, all right, we're descending, that's the rate of change because it says it's constant. So I'll pop these back into my mind, the delta y over delta x, noticing that in the table the x is time in hours, and the y is the height from the ground in feet. Now, one of the things you can do sometimes is go simple. You noticed I blacked out all the decimals because I noticed that I had 1 hour, 2 hour, and 3 hour. Now, since the rate of change is constant, I can just pick any of those. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to say my change in the height. I'm going from 3,250 down to 2,250. So that's going to be my change in y, or my change in height. Notice it goes on the top of my fraction. And in the same order, I'm going to subtract my x's, or time. So I'm going to say 1 minus 2. It's very important that you go in the same order. And if you notice, a positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative. And we get our answer. Sorry about that. I clicked on the slide too early. Now, if you didn't recognize that, you can use any two numbers you want. Here I take the first two ordered pairs from the table, and I do the same thing. I do my change in height on the top, I do my change in the time on the bottom, and what do you know, if we take a calculator, guess what? We still get the same answer. All right, so it's time for you to try question number 2. All right, you can also take a table and use your technology. Use our stat edit. Remember, there is a link to a graphing calculator simulator that you can download onto your Chromebook, but I'm going to quickly run you through some screenshots of how to do this with your calculator. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to press the stat button, and you're going to enter your X values in L1 and your Y values in L2. Notice that temperature is X in this case, and ice cream sales is the Y, or the output. All right, so the next thing you can do is you're going to go back to stat, like my creepy looking finger is doing now, but we're going to arrow to the right so that we see calculate at the top. Now at this point we know we're doing a linear regression because it said constant rate of change, so we're going to choose 4. And this screen should appear. Now once this screen appears, you're going to arrow down to where it says store regression equation. And once your cursor is there, you can press, what did I say? You can press your alpha calc, like my fingers are doing right here. You put alpha and then calc, or the trace button right here, and this will pop up. And you just keep pressing enter, and you notice that, hey, wow, there is my slope right there. Okay, so if you want to try doing a regression, or if not, you can do question number 3 the same way we did our previous problem. So go ahead and try this one right now. Another way we can do a problem is by looking at a graph. As we take a look at this graph right here, it's important that we go through and pick very clear points. If we're not sure that an ordered pair is exactly what we see, we're not going to choose it. So in this case, if I go looking for clear points, I notice that I have 0, 0, which is the origin, and then I have 2, 100, and then I have 4, 200, and I have 6, 300. I now have a table. I can do a delta y over delta x like I did in my previous problem. And I can see again that if I take my change in y, which in this case is money, and I go 200 minus 100, I'm going to have to subtract the weeks in the same order. So in the bottom, my change in x, I'm going to do a 4 minus 2. Notice I get 100 divided by 2, and that's going to give me my answer of $50 a week, which is answer choice A. Another thing you could do, remember, you could also find any of those 2 points. You can do a rise over run and go from there. All right, it's time for you to try one. Here we go. I did want to talk about negative slope as well. As we take a look at this, we need to again identify clean points. How many clean points do you see? I see 3. Here they are. There's one up there at 0, 12. There's another, which is 8, 6. And a third one, which is 16, 0. If I take those ordered pairs and put them in a XY table, it looks like this. Now remember, if we get these numbers switched up, not good, not going to happen. So there are a variety of things we can do here. You can either do a delta y over delta x, like we have been doing since the first problem. We could do a regression on our calculator, like we just did in the previous example. Or we could also do the tried and trusted rise and run. You notice I just skipped this middle one right here because I had 2 intercepts. It does not matter which 2 points you use. You just go from one to the other, do a rise. In this case, I'm rising down, which is kind of weird, so that makes it negative. And my run is to the right, and that's a positive. And what do we know about a negative divided by a positive? You guessed it. All right, here we go. Here's your last problem. Look at that, just over 10 minutes. You'll have a blessed week.